Maple Leaf,
Where am I?
you're in Night in the Woods. How have you been?
Where are we?
We're in May's house.
What year is it?
It's 2019. It's been like 9 months since we've played this game.
9 months.
9 months.
Has it really been that long? Have you actually looked up?
I have looked it up. Yeah, I've looked it up so far to the point that the whole new update for the game came out called the Weird Autumn Update, which added a ton of stuff which I'm not going to cover in this video because, for one, we're close to the end of the story, and for two, there's so much new stuff that why bother? Let's finish the story before we actually to get to the bonus, right?
All right.
But I'm just showing off here that the room has been updated because I did some stuff, and we can actually play bass in our room, and there's a ton of new songs to play. It's actually pretty cool.
So when you say play the songs, do you mean that rhythm game?
Yeah, I do mean it, and I did play them all. And to assuage your guilt of my playing that I play so badly, I actually played them to the point that I actually could 100% them. So hooray!
All right, all right.
So last time we played this game, I know it's been a long time, but basically we ran into a gothic horror. We ran into a murder cult of dads, basically.
Right, I do remember that.
And basically they revealed that they were sacrificing people who they considered bad for the town or whatever.
They were sacrificing trouble people, like trouble kids, trouble adults, whatever, that weren't benefiting their society in any way in order to keep, what's this place called? Possum Springs?
Mm-hmm.
They're trying to keep Possum Springs alive by sacrificing these people to an eldritch god.
Basically, yes. And I mean, I know at the time, I recall you were saying, like, what the hell? Like, this game just did a whiplash of like, small-town Americana into gothic horror.
You know, looking back on the LP, I haven't, like, watched the LP anytime recently, I'm afraid to say.
No, that's fine. That's cool.
I feel like I've been kind of unfair towards Night in the Woods in general. And just that... I live in Canada, first of all. I don't feel like I've grown up in small town Canada like Possum Springs is supposed to be. Like Possum Springs is supposed to take place in like what, Iowa?
I think it's more like Pennsylvania or whatever, like more east in the mountains. But go on.
Something like that. And I feel like I've had a difficult time trying to connect with the characters and their plight.
Right.
Looking like I'm trying to go into this video in particular, being, I don't know, a little more open to the plot, trying to be more receptive to everything that's going on. But here's the problem with me personally. As soon as they introduced the problem being the Eldritch God, that took me out of the story almost completely.
But here's the thing. I don't think that you're really supposed to go all in on the fact that the Eldritch God is the root of the problem, because it's not. Like, even without knowing that it was the Eldritch God was the root of the problem, like, the town was already, like, dying, you know? It's basically, like, a comment on how so much of the United States, and so much even of Canada, these small towns are becoming obsolete and they're dying, and for the past 60, 70 years, if you grew up in these towns, you were in a shithole place, And I think that kind of couching the story into kind of like saying, how can we explain the horrors that are going on? It's almost like completely acceptable almost to be like, yeah, it turns out that this town does have a horrible Eldritch God living in it, but you know what? Even without knowledge of that, town still sucks, And I do think that there's also a bit of an element here where I don't want to put words or I don't want to say what the creator was making. I'm going to obviously death of the author this to hell. But I want to say that if you've ever read Lovecraft, or if you've read any of these gothic novels and stories, you do realize that it was kind of a sort of a malaise of like what is beyond, because we can't understand the world that we live in. And you ascribe it to like some sort of malevolent force that is beyond our comprehension. And it's not beyond the pale that society itself sucks to the point that it's like, well, if it's almost comforting that to blame a sort of thing we can't understand rather than just saying, actually, that's just reality, It's the reality that we, as human beings, suck to each other government-wise.
Sure.
So, I mean, at this point, like, you are going to understand, like, they don't, even like on the day-to-day, like, you're noticing that May is just kind of walking around. She's not really kind of waking up and going like, Jesus Christ, what happened yesterday?
So you're saying that the god is supposed to be a metaphor?
I do believe so. I mean, just like Lovecraft and talking about, and the Gothic genre of talking basically that there, you know, it's all a metaphor for an unknowing part of our psyche, an unknowing part of our, like, the heart of darkness of our towns and cities, because society sucks. And it's almost, like I said, it's almost comforting to say it's something beyond our control that's doing it, you know? Something unknowable. I mean, you don't have to like it. You don't have to like the Scott Benson's and I can't. Geez, I feel so bad now that I, just like you with Pikmin, I kind of like, crap. Who wrote this, mate, again? even though it's like, I know it's Infinite Fall and a team of 3, and I think Benson is just the artist. He's maybe a co-writer, but there are other writers like who wrote most of the story. Probably did more of it, but I'm also gonna make a shout out here to not only the thread for basically like periodically like saying, hey, Olive Branch, are you alive? You know? But also to Harris Bomber Guy, or H Bomber Guy on YouTube, who actually did say, hey, I want to make a video about this later on. And I was like, yes, I really do want to play through the end of the game now and actually finish this LP, simply because he actually said he's going to make a video about this game. And I just want to get it over with before he does.
Yeah, I get you.
So, what do you think happened in school for May to basically say, yo, I'm out?
If I were to put myself in her shoes, my first guess would be as soon as she got to school and they started talking about her future and they started talking about her prospects as whatever it was that she was trying to study to be, I would assume... Oh, I don't really want to say I assume, because that's, you know...
That's the whole point, that's what you're doing.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. But I would think it's because... I would think she dropped out because she got scared by all the sudden responsibility.
That is a definitely possibility. I mean, May constantly, and I think we've talked about this before, she's always saying, I'm 20, I'm an adult. Whenever people say, hey kid, she's got such an identity of saying, I'm past 18, treat me like an adult. But like Greg, she's completely a mess.
But does she act like an adult?
That's exactly, yeah.
What does an adult act like?
Not like May, not smashing stuff with a baseball bat and beating people up. I mean, not unless that's your job.
Yeah, well, yeah, but how often does that come around? And the reason why she quit school is because she wasn't ready to not smash stuff with a baseball bat. She wasn't ready to act like a typical adult.
Yeah, an aimless kid. I mean, she is 20. I mean, looking back on this game, like, we're in our, like, I'm 31. I think you're 29 now, 28?
I am 29.
29. Like, we're almost a whole 10 years older than May is. And the thing is that we, at this point of our life, we can almost, like, have you ever read Catcher in the Rye? Have you ever read that book?
I haven't read it, no.
Oh, man. Okay, the point being, like, if you read that book as a teenager, you totally identified with Holden Caulfield, the protagonist. But reading it as an adult, and you read this teenager, like this teenage protagonist, you're like, what an insufferable, annoying kid. But that's because when we're teens, we see the world as it's like, yeah, the world doesn't understand me, man. But then when you read it again as an adult, you know better, you know?
Right.
And I think that we can't quite, at this point, I think, we can kind of maybe sympathize with May a little bit, but we at the same time kind of look askance at her and be like, kid, no, we can't even call you an adult now, because even when you're 20, you're still thinking that you want to claim adulthood without acting like one. And you were saying what makes an adult? Like I think someone on the thread said responsibilities and duties and a general sense of contribution to a group or a society.
It's definitely not age.
it's not age, that's for sure. I mean, I've seen kids who are way more mature than the adults, you know?
Yeah, it's the stuff that comes with age.
Well, actually, speaking of age, and I think you were saying, like, I know, I was going to ask as a follow-up, what do you think May's going to do now that she's back in town and probably going to live here for a while? Because the mom is basically saying, let's make some ground rules, you know? Like, you're going to live at my house, you're going to follow my rules. And it's like, that's fair, right? And this conversation coming up with the dad is actually kind of nice because we did something a little extra in the game that unlocked a special ending for the dad, which was the tooth. You remember that story about the tooth?
God, that was a long time ago.
It was a long time ago. Basically, I'll give you the rundown. When we were in the library and we were looking for information on the ghost, one of the stories that we found was actually a strange but true, kind of like Uncle John's bathroom reader kind of thing.
Okay.
Basically saying, about a long time ago in the past of this town, a bunch of miners basically made a secret society, and they ambushed their mine boss or something, and they all beat him up and ripped out a tooth from his head.
Oh, right, I do remember that.
And they were like, yeah, now we're, as part of our society, everyone who carries this tooth is part of this background, of the workers unite kind of thing, right? So we found that tooth, and our dad's currently telling us right now, May's dad is basically saying this job sucks. The boss is supposed to respect you. I wanted to provide for you and your mom, and May's gonna say something, and they're gonna have a little heart-to-heart that I think is actually kind of heartwarming. Even though at this point the dad's just like, oh, the job sucks. I just want to, job was supposed to give an identity, but now it's just worked for health insurance and the house.
I just want to say real quick, one of the hardest things about doing this LP specifically, this LP, or at least Night in the Woods as a game, is very, very heavy on the dialogue.
Right.
And it's difficult to have a conversation and pay attention to what they're saying at the same time.
Well, it's fair enough. I mean, you can do one or the other, but I'm just kind of giving the rundown for you in case you did miss it, The dad is saying just, oh god, this job sucks. We can't unionize here.
Yeah, I did catch all of that. I'm doing my best. I'm trying to pay attention to everything that you're saying, and I'm trying to pay attention to everything that he's saying.
Right.
And he's saying like you said, he wants to have a job that provides for his family, and he wants a job that has regular hours and lets him have a life, but they don't have that in Possum Springs.
Nope, not anymore. I mean, that's the whole point. Life has changed. Society has changed. And, we can't kind of look back on the way things were and say, I want to go back to that, Also, one cool thing that Weird Autumn added as an update is a bunch of new expressions for May. She's way more expressive in this update, in the game in general.
Are you sure the update did that?
Yeah, I'm sure, because when I replayed it, she was way more evocative in a lot of old scenes,
Right,
I didn't record it because it's we've seen that stuff,
Right, you had to play through the game a second time.
A third time, actually.
A third time? What
happened was I finished I stopped the LP, right? And then I tried playing again, and then the recording didn't work out. And then I had to go back because I hadn't backed up the save file. So I played it through a third whole time, but hey, this game was fun, so I can't really knock it on that. I just wish you could chapter select.
Yeah.
So now that Dad's saying, hey, would you want to be a striker with us? And she's like, fuck yeah. Who knows, May is going to be the new Alexander Cortez, Ocasio-Cortez. She'll just be like, let's be a politician.
Let's be real, would you vote for May?
Not at the current state of things, but you know what?
Yeah, exactly.
You know what? I believe people can change. I'm a very optimistic kind of guy with people.
Well, sure. I mean, we were both pretty different a decade ago.
Absolutely.
She's 10 years younger than us. I'd imagine she'd be significantly different once she's 30.
Mm-hmm. Also, I did for this update and the next one, because this is the last 2 episodes of the story. I cut out all the backtracking or running around from place to place simply because I figured you probably wouldn't want to just watch me run around, you as in you, Maple Leaf, and you as in the audience, and just get to the actual good stuff, which is the dialogue, I think. So, final conversation with the possum, Rabies. who's a cool dude.
Why? I'm sure I asked this before, but why is rabies a possum?
He's a possum. I mean, it's just Germ found him.
No, no. Why is rabies not anthropomorphic?
It's one more time the goofy problem.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. I really don't know why this game is furry or anthropomorphic. I think it's because it's easier to kind of when something is looks like this, it's easier to, I think, imprint yourself on the character rather than having them be a preset face or a preset skin color. Because May, you see her now, we think she's white, but at the same time, we figure she is, but at the same time, would you be able to tell, for example, that Greg is gay, the way he looks? Would you be able to tell that B, who knows what B's skin color is, And it's easier to just say to yourself, I can see parts of me in this character, because I think it's easier to tell a story when people don't look like people. If you get what I'm saying when I say people.
Towards the end of the game, it might have been an episode or two ago, there was a whole thing about how May was having difficulty associating with people, and she was in order to get around it, she would break people down into shapes rather than into people, right?
Yes.
Something like that. So there's that theory that the reason why all of the people of Possum Springs are animals is because May is not, we're seeing the game through May's eyes, and she's not seeing them as people, she's seeing them as animals or objects or just shapes. Right.
And they happen to make animals.
Yeah, and a second theory that was going around is just that animals are easier to draw.
Look at the art style of this game. The art direction is lovely, and it's very simplistic. It's very easy to not have to draw a big, a person with 5 fingers and all. May looks very simplistic. The characters look very simplistic, and I think, like you said, I think it's a twofold thing. We're looking at May from the perspective of her dissociative disorder, and at the same time, it's just easy to draw. So we just passed out Molly, who's basically I got a lot of weird calls, and it's you could figure it's the miners, the cult that we put under the ground. And here's our favorite poet, Selmers. Have you ever taken pills that make you pee?
I can't say I have.
Well, there we go. I don't think I have either. Never had that kind of problem with medication. Summers is cool. I'd hang out with Summers.
We still don't know what gender Summers is, do we?
I think she's a girl. I want to say she's a girl. I want to.
Her being a girl sounds right to me. I just don't recall off the top of my head.
So here's another fun little tidbit. These guys are going to make a comment later on about having a water balloon toss and how it's a shitty idea. That's a Weird Autumn thing. This is and we're going to see that later. But I think even without that comment, you could just see these people are basically, this is a town council, basically bickering at each other, just like politics.
Do you feel like this game is more topical or less topical in today's political climate?
Well, let's not forget that this game was made 2 years ago. I do think it's strongly still topical. I think it's strongly still topical because not much has changed in the Midwest or West Virginia-esque Appalachian areas. And, let's just point out that many of these stories are still going to be I think a point of contention with us for the next maybe 10 years. And I think 10 years later, it'll be like, maybe things will change enough that it'll be like, yeah, this game is historical for the time. But I mean, politics is always the same. Like, small town council power struggles, it's still a thing, right? People bitching at each other, being like, you have the stupidest ideas and you're always undermining me and shit like that.
Hmm. Just adults having adult problems.
Adults having adult... Actually, okay, I'm going to make another kind of... not a shout-out, but I'm going to make a recommendation for the thread. If you've never read The Dictator's Handbook, see if you can't find a copy of it. If you can't find a copy of it in your library, or you don't have a library, you can go on YouTube and you can look up, I think, CFP Gray's Rules for Rulers. And it really goes over the detail of why is it that politics is so cynical, and why is it that people are, in politics are so, like, almost self-centered and short-serving, or self-serving and self-centered, you know how it is? And, short-term focused. And the guys, I think the political scientists who wrote the book basically are trying to argue, it's not that they're stupid or evil, it's that that's how politics is. Politics is about maintaining power and keeping control of the finances. And basically the finances is power.
I feel like that's not how it's supposed to be.
That's exactly my thought too, and the writers are saying, but here, we're not trying to say of how things should be, we're just kind of pointing out how things are. And that's probably worse. So one of the big draws of this particular update is right here. The final stars.
Before we go into looking about the stars, the last guy that we talked to was talking about snow. And a real bad snowstorm coming out. Are you aware of the weather going on in the Midwest right now?
Yes, in today's date, January 30th or the 29th, if you're thinking about it, yesterday's news, minus 60 degrees with wind chill?
Yeah.
That's climate change, record changing right there again.
That's climate change for you right there.
I mean, I think the people living in the Midwest would appreciate this dust star right now.
This winter so far has been very mild, so this is Mother Nature calling in her IOU.
Yeah, to be like, it's not the East Coast that owes us, or that owes me. It's the Midwest. I'm gonna slam the hell out of the Midwest. So this one star makes May want to cry, and I don't know if it's because she crossed with the Eldritch God, or if it's because it's like about survival and about making a fire and staying warm in a place that's inhospitable to you. But, whatever your sensation of it, it's not a bad star.
Have you ever encountered a piece of art that made you want to cry?
That made me want to cry?
Yeah.
I've never saw a piece of art that made me want to cry, but I've definitely been speechless and just sat back and looked at art before and just really took it in, Have you ever seen this art that made you want to cry?
If by art we mean painting or a photograph or something, then no.
Yes, I agree with that. But movies and music, I've cried before.
Occasionally I've come across a story or a movie or something that has made me feel feelings, yes.
It made me feel a feeling.
Sometimes music too.
Here's a cool little tidbit. Speaking of art and discovery and making you want to cry, do you agree with Mr. Chazakov saying we found them together, and because we shared this experience is a discovery? Because and May's saying, well, granddads used to say the same thing. Hearing a story happen to you, so you discovered it. Do you agree with that?
Hearing a story happen, so you discovered it?
Yes. Because it's like saying we discovered something. It's like, yeah, but it's already been discovered before, so it's not a discovery. But it's like, but it happened to you, so it's a discovery. Do you agree with that?
In the sense that it contributes to your own personal growth, yeah, I would agree with that.
Okay, that's fair. We found all 7 dusk stars. Mr. Chazakov is happy with us, and I was saying, dude, a supermoon's coming up. Let's see a supermoon.
Didn't we have some really weirdly named supermoon recently?
Wasn't it last year, in August or so? Or was it more closer to November? I can't remember now, but yes, we had one.
I was a couple weeks ago, I want to say. It was like a super red blood werewolf moon or something weird like that.
I had not heard about that, and now I feel bad for missing it. I guess I'll have to look up into like Google and be like, when's the next supermoon coming up, so I can see the gigantic moon in Montreal.
Yeah, I wish I remember the name specifically of the thing that I'm talking about, because I'm worried that if I'm wrong, I sound like an idiot.
But you know what? Maybe we had seen it. We did see an eclipse last year. And also, this is a little reminder for myself. I should do my laundry. My laundry basket is pretty full.
Yes, my own hamper is starting to get a little full. Just adult problems.
So here's another bit of an adult problems. These guys, do you remember them?
Nope.
So the lady on the left, I believe it's a lady. Again, not sure if it's a guy or a girl. But the wolf person on the left basically said, I hate sales. I hate this job. I don't want to work in telephones anymore. So Weird Autumn adds a few extra conversations. I believe this is one of them, or the final conversation between them. But basically she says, I'm going to get a new job at the supermarket. But the job, basically, she's saying, I can't work full time because the computer doesn't let me. You know? It's a bit too real, man. Automation.
Yeah, it's one of the arguments for universal basic income that I've heard, is that automation is starting to move in on businesses so much that they're, at least in Canada, I'm pretty sure, you're not allowed to fire someone for a machine replacing you, but if a machine does a job, you don't have to hire someone to do that job. So if you already have the job and a machine replaces you, they can't fire you for that, but if you quit, then they don't have to hire someone to replace you, right? So that's one of the arguments for universal basic income that I've heard. It's just that machines are starting to take over, and now people are having so much difficulty finding work that, you know, you may as well just pay them to exist.
Again, yeah, I mean, I think like automation is going to be brought up in the Weird Autumn updates a bit, like the fact that robots replace things. And I'm not sure if it's because the writer decided, let's make it slightly more topical with extra conversations. But like you're pointing out, like even in this town, imagine that this town, everybody who's losing their jobs is basically being replaced by the machine. And that murder cult of dads basically said, well, fuck that, we want to keep what we have. So if it means, like, you know, sacrificing other human lives to keep what we used to have, then let's do it, because the alternative is just not having it.
The alternative is eventually the town changes and you don't change with it.
Yeah, but then again, what are you going to do? Would you want to stay in a town that has no prospects? And I think that's another point for universal basic income, to basically say you don't have to go out to the town. You can stay in your small town and be guaranteed a livelihood.
I feel like this is starting to get a little too political, but I am curious. Do you think universal basic income would help Possum Springs, or would it hurt it by making people move away because now they have the money to do that?
I think that, you know what, first let me answer your question if it's getting too political. I think this whole game is a mess. You can't not talk about this game and get slightly political with it. But for the people of Possum Springs, I do think that, you know, if you wanted to stay, the thing about, you know, something about universal basic income is that you'd have the choice to want to stay. Today, if you live in a small town like this one, you don't have that choice if you don't have the money. So at least UBI would be able to give you the choice of being like, hey, do you want to move? Do you want to get out there? You have that choice. And if you don't, because you want to stay in a small town or because you like the rustic aspect of it, you can.
I do agree with you, but I feel like that didn't answer my question.
What, do you think that they would stay and make a livelihood?
Do you think if everyone in Possum Springs had UBI, do you think they would stay in Possum Springs, or would they move to the big cities?
Well, I definitely believe some would move, but not everyone. Like, you can't tell everybody, okay, you're gonna get UBI, but you can't leave. I'm pretty sure some of them would move out, would be glad to move out. I mean, I think Beatrice Santello, she is the one who says, I want to go to college, I hate my life here. And if you remember that from the proximity video, she says, I'm stuck because my mom is dead, my dad doesn't work, I have to take care of the store by myself. You went to college, I'm super jealous about you for that, and the fact that you left makes me pissed, you know? She'd be the first one out. So these three teens, earlier in the game, said, hey, find 3 pentagrams, and May's like, yo, I found them. And they're like, huh, interesting. So this is the very last section for this particular episode, because we're still catching up with all the people who are currently available for us to catch up with. One more time, one more poem with Fisherman Jones.
You think he's caught anything?
I believe he has, yes. He's got to have caught at least one thing.
It's a weird place to fish, if you ask me.
The tunnel fish, man, the flood. So here are the two musicians that we helped out, just jamming together.
You'd think the fish would be scared by all the noise.
Possibly. Or maybe they like it. Maybe it attracts them.
Some weird-ass fish.
So the random teens down here who've always been kind of trying to get with, like, as a friend.
So this whole update I've noticed is kind of about May's character having grown after meeting the cult. She's going around basically trying to be a mom to everyone.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that also helps the fact that I actually spoke with people and made connections with them. And speaking of being a mommy connection, like next episode, we're gonna meet up with Lori, and we're gonna get some answers to this mural because somebody fucked it up.
And that's no good.